Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are. My name is Jamie Alley, and I would like to welcome you to today's webinar. This informational webinar is for people interested in applying to the Department of Energy's Office of Indian Energy's funding opportunity announcement entitled Tribal Colleges and Universities Planning for Clean Energy Transition 2025, FOA number DE-FOA 0003403, which was issued September 26, 2024. The intent of this webinar is to cover the basic aspects of the funding opportunity announcement, otherwise known as a FOA, and highlight essential details about the application process, including the types of applications sought, who is eligible to apply, cost share and other requirements, what the application needs to contain, how to ask questions, and how applications will be reviewed and selected for funding. Before we begin, I'd like to draw your attention to the email address tribalgrants@hq.doe.gov on the lower right-hand side of this slide. This is the official mailbox to direct all of your questions to during the entire FOA process. Please do not contact DOE or DOE laboratory staff or contractors directly with any questions, including myself, as all questions must be in writing. The reason for only accepting questions in writing is to ensure you receive a formal response and so that everyone has the benefit of the same response. Because if you have a question, other potential applicants likely have a similar question. As we will not have a question and answer session as part of today's webinar, please capture your questions as they come up and send them via email to tribalgrants@hq.doe.gov. In the subject line of your email, please include the FOA number DE-FOA-0003403. Unless a similarly asked question has already been asked, unless a similar question has already been asked, responses to questions received at this mailbox will be posted to the frequently asked questions or FAQs page for this FOA on the IE Exchange website. Responses to your questions will typically be posted within 3 business days after receipt. Before submitting a question, please check the FAQs webpage on the IE Exchange website to see if a similar question has already been answered. In submitting a question, please be careful not to include any language that might be business sensitive, proprietary, or confidential. Your participation in this webinar is completely voluntary. There are no particular advantages or disadvantages to the application evaluation process with respect to your participation in today's webinar. These slides and an audio recording of this webinar will be posted in the next week or so. As a registrant of the webinar, you will be notified when this material is available on the Office of Indian Energy's website. Note that if there are any inconsistencies between the funding opportunity announcement, this presentation, or statements from DOE or other personnel, the FOA document is the controlling document, and applicants should rely solely on that FOA language or seek clarification by sending your questions to tribalgrants@hq.doe.gov. These slides and an audio recording of this webinar will be posted in the next week or so, as I mentioned. As a registrant of the webinar, you'll receive that email when this material is available. That said, let's get started. Next slide, please. To begin, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Josh Gregory. Josh will be assisting me with the webinar today. Josh Gregory joined the U.S. Department of Energy's Office of Indian Energy as an engineer in September of 2021. He's duty stationed in Golden, Colorado. Josh serves as a technical expert supporting technical assistance and administering financial assistance awards to American Indian nations, Alaska Native villages, and tribal and intertribal organizations. Before joining the Office of Indian Energy team, Josh spent the previous 6 years as a mechanical engineer with the Division of Energy and Mineral Development, DEMD, a tribal energy office within the Bureau of Indian Affairs. While with the DEMD, Josh assisted Indian tribes and Alaska Native villages with energy project planning and identifying sustainable energy development options by providing technical assistance and administering financial assistance through the DEMD's Tribal Energy Grant Program. Josh was born and raised in Denver, Colorado, and holds a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering from the University of Colorado. Next slide, please. Again, my name is Jamie Alley. I'm an engineer and project officer with the Office of Indian Energy, and I'm also duty stationed in Golden, Colorado. I have over 20 years of experience in construction, clean energy project development, and project management. As a project officer, I administer financial assistance awards to Indian nations, Alaska Native villages, and intertribal organizations. I joined the U.S. Department of Energy Office of Indian Energy team this year after previously working nearly 15 years as a contractor supporting the office. I was raised near Denver, Colorado, and hold a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from the Colorado School of Mines. Next slide, please. Before we get into the specifics on the funding opportunity announcement, I first wanted to provide just a brief overview of the office. As advocated for and by the tribes and incorporated into the Energy Policy Act of 2005, the Office of Indian Energy was stood up in 2011 as one of about a dozen assistant secretarial level offices within the department. The office, authorized under EPAC 2005, or the Energy Policy Act, is charged by Congress to, number one, promote Indian energy development, efficiency, and use. Number two, reduce or stabilize energy costs. Number three, enhance and strengthen Indian tribal energy and economic infrastructure relating to natural resources development and electrification. And number four, bring electrical power and service to Indian lands and the homes of tribal members located on Indian lands or acquired, constructed, or improved in whole or in part with federal funds. To aid us in accomplishing our mission, the office receives insights on issues affecting energy and infrastructure development on tribal lands and to help guide us through the Indian Country Energy and Infrastructure Working Group. On the right side of this slide, you'll see a few examples of co-funded projects that have been successfully completed. Next slide, please. Now, about the deployment program. To achieve our mission and address barriers, the Office of Indian Energy offers, number one, financial assistance through competitive grants. Number two, technical assistance offered at no charge to Indian tribes and tribal entities. And number three, education and capacity building. These three prongs are intended to assist Indian tribes and tribal entities to overcome the unique regulatory, technical, and economic challenges to developing their vast energy resources, if and how they so choose. Next slide, please. Since 2010, DOE's Office of Indian Energy has invested over $190 million in more than 240 tribal energy projects across the contiguous 48 states and in Alaska, valued at over $300 million. Furthermore, recipients have also contributed over $125 million to these projects. These investments included grants for planning, feasibility, development, and deployment of clean energy technology in Indian country. Through these grants, the Office of Indian Energy continues its efforts in partnership with Native communities to maximize the deployment of clean energy solutions for the benefit of American Indians and Alaska Natives. By the way, this slide shows our tribal energy project database on our website, which offers an interactive map along with a sortable table. You can get project summaries, presentations, and if completed, final reports on each of these projects. Next slide, please. This graphic reflects the amount and percentage of funds by type and investments by year. The focus has been on installing clean energy technology for near-term tangible benefits within a community. As such, 85% of the funds have been provided for deployment projects. The next slide quantifies those benefits. Of the over $190 million invested by the Office of Indian Energy, over $160 million, 85% of all investment has been invested in energy hardware installations or deployment projects. These projects, valued over $275 million, have resulted in tangible results for over 140 American Indian and Alaska Native communities. The positive impacts to those communities include over 63 megawatts of new generation installed, over 19 megawatt hours of battery storage installed, over $21 million saved every year, over $530 million saved over the lifetime of these systems, $323.29 saved for every DOE dollar invested, and nearly 11,000 tribal buildings affected. Again, there are more pictures on this page. I love the pictures as they can tell the story much better than I can. Next slide, please. Since 2010, our office has issued 22 funding opportunity announcements. Of the over 760 applications accepted between 2010 and 2023, the Office of Indian Energy funded over 33% of all applications received, which I believe is a relatively high percentage, especially considering the average for DOE is estimated between 5% and 10% of all applications. It's worth noting that our funding opportunities are competitive, and for the deployment grants, the projects are intended to be shovel ready. Note, the 690 applications received represented over $1 billion. Next slide, please. Since 2010, DOE's Office of Indian Energy has invested over, oh, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong slide. Before we discuss the funding opportunity announcement, DE FOA 0003403, I want to walk you through the IE Exchange site and where to find the FOA document itself, application forms, and frequently asked questions. The IE Exchange website is at ie-exchange.energy.gov. Once on that page, click Funding Opportunities in the left navigation. Scroll through the list until you locate FOA number DE FOA 0003403. Clicking the FOA number in the FOA list will take you to the section of the web page specific to this FOA as shown on the slide. As you can see in this slide of the IE Exchange website, the section specific to this FOA, DE FOA 0003403, includes a brief summary and other key information. The direct link to this FOA summary is at the bottom of this slide. My apologies for if it's a little difficult to read this slide. The screenshot will be expanded in the next few slides. To apply to this FOA, start by registering with IE Exchange and then clicking the Apply button shown in the left of this slide. During the process, a control number will be assigned. Retain this number as it will be used as an identifier and required on all of your application documents. Note also that there are manuals on the site which will provide you more directions on registering and submitting an application. Next slide, please. As you can see from this screenshot, the IE Exchange summary for this FOA includes the FOA document itself for download, the application forms and templates. Note that the application forms and templates for this FOA on IE Exchange represent only a portion of the documents required for a complete application. The remaining documents required for a complete application have no specific format and are to be generated by the applicant. Number 3, contact information for submitting questions regarding this FOA and for IE Exchange support. Number 4, a link to this frequently asked questions or FAQs page specific to this FOA. Note that general non-FOA specific FAQs are also available on the website. And number 5, the submission deadline of December 18th, 2024 at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Remember, this is Eastern Time, so please plan accordingly and adjust for whichever time zone you are located. If the application forms and templates are not shown, you'll need to click on the View Application Forms and Templates, and a list of forms and templates will be revealed, which I'll show you in the next slide. Remember, these are only a portion of the documents required for a complete application. The remaining documents required for a complete application have no specific format and are to be generated by the applicant. Next slide, please. As you can see, once you click on View Application Forms and Templates, you'll see the various forms and templates that need to be included as part of your application. As I mentioned before, these forms and templates represent only a portion of the documents required for a complete application. The remaining documents required for a complete application have no specific format and are to be generated by the applicant. Further into this presentation, we'll go through all the documents that comprise a complete application. The following forms and templates have been provided for this funding opportunity. Number 1, application for financial assistance, SF424. Number 2, the summary slide. Number 3, the technical volume. Number 4, the work plan. Number 5, eligibility statements and evidence file. Number 6, the budget justification workbook form. Number 7, the subrecipient budget justification workbook form. Number 8, the budget support file. Number 9, application registration certifications. Number 10, the SFLLL disclosure of lobbying activities. And number 11, locations of work. All other documents required to complete your application have no specific format and are to be generated by the applicant. For a complete list of required application documents, see Table 2, Required Application Documents, beginning on page 22 of the FOA document. And at the bottom of the slide, you'll see the frequently asked questions, or FAQs, which we'll discuss on the next slide. Next slide, please. Responses to all FOA-related questions received in our email box, tribalgrants@hq.doe.gov, will be posted on the Frequently Asked Questions, or FAQs, webpage specific to this FOA on the iExchange website. This slide shows an example of the FAQ webpage from a previous FOA. Please check this page periodically, as questions and responses will continue to be posted throughout the entire time the FOA is open. Please also check this page before submitting a question, as a similar question may have already been answered. Also see the questions and answers page for non-FOA specific questions and answers regarding iExchange. Next slide, please. Additionally, there are general frequently asked questions and responses available via the main page navigation as shown. These are non-FOA specific questions and answers which may be useful if you have general questions regarding iExchange. Next slide, please. I also wanted to let you know that we've developed 2 user guides, one on iExchange and the other on the logon and registration process, including the 2-factor authentication process. You can access those by clicking user guides on the main page left navigation as shown. Each has numerous screenshots to help you navigate the registration and application process, so make use of those resources. And let us know if there's anything that would improve those resources, as we want them to be as useful to you as possible. Next slide, please. On the cover page of the FOA, you will likely find key dates, not likely, you will find key dates. The FOA has already been posted and we are conducting the FOA informational webinar now. All applications are due on the iExchange website no later than 5 p.m. Eastern on December 18th, 2024. Note that the closing time is 5 p.m. Eastern time. Remember, this is Eastern time, so please plan accordingly and adjust for whatever time zone you are located. Please note that DOE will not extend the submission deadline for applicants that fail to submit required information due to server/connection congestion. Also, iExchange is designed to enforce the deadlines specified in this FOA. The apply and submit buttons may be disabled at the defined submission deadline. Therefore, please ensure you begin uploading your complete application at least 48 hours in advance of the submission deadline to ensure you meet that deadline, allowing at least 1 hour to submit an application. Note that once the application is submitted in iExchange, you may revise or update your application up until the deadline. DOE anticipates notifying applicants selected for negotiation of award late spring of 2025 and making awards approximately 90 days after receipt of any requested supplemental information. Each and every applicant will receive a notification letter by email to the technical and administrative points of contact designated by the applicant in IE Exchange. Notification letters will state whether the application is determined to be non-compliant due to an incomplete or late application, ineligible, meaning it does not meet the eligibility requirements beginning on page 12 of the FOA document, non-responsive, as defined under section 1C, applications specifically not of interest, beginning on the bottom of page 12 of the FOA document, not selected for funding, selection for funding is postponed, not selected for funding but designated as an alternate, or selected for negotiation of an award. The notification letter will state the basis upon which those decisions were made. Next slide, please. Even though we will go through much of the information contained in the funding opportunity announcement in this webinar, I would urge you to read the FOA and then read it again. Next slide, please. To apply to this FOA, applicants must register, create an account, and submit all required application documents to iExchange at the URL shown. A control number will be assigned while registering in iExchange. Retain this number as it will be required on all application documents. The iExchange registration does not have a delay. However, the remaining registration requirements could take several weeks to process and are required prior to submitting an application. Excuse me. An authorized representative of the applicant must certify that those registrations are complete and that certification included as part of your application. Therefore, all potential applicants lacking a unique entity identifier or UEI number, which replaced the Data Universal Numbering System or DUNS number for entities doing business with the federal government, or not yet registered with the System for Award Management or SAM, FedConnect, or grants.gov should complete those registrations as soon as possible. You will also need to register in grants.gov at www.grants.gov so that you'll receive automatic updates when amendments to this FOA are posted, if any. Note that applications will only be accepted through iExchange, not through grants.gov. Next slide, please. Regarding registrations, the iExchange registration does not have a delay. However, the remaining registrations, sorry, I was just double checking I'm on the right slide. One moment, please. Okay. All potential applicants lacking a unique entity identifier number or not registered yet with SAM.gov or FedConnect must complete those registrations prior to submitting an application. Please see Part 6B of the FOA beginning on page 55 of the FOA document for information on how to register for the above systems. It is really important you register in these other systems as soon as possible, as these registrations need to be completed prior to submitting an application, as those registrations could take several weeks. An authorized representative of the applicant must certify that all system registrations have been completed and that certification as part of your application. The applicant registration certifications template is available under application forms and templates for this FOA on iExchange at iexchange.energy.gov. Next slide, please. All applicants are strongly encouraged to carefully read the funding opportunity announcement and adhere to the stated submission requirements. This presentation summarizes the contents of the FOA. However, if there are any inconsistencies between the FOA and this presentation or statements from DOE or other personnel, the FOA is the controlling document, and applicants should rely solely on the FOA language or seek clarification from DOE.
If you believe there is an inconsistency, please contact us by sending an email to tribalgrants@hq.doe.gov. Next slide, please. The agenda for this webinar is as shown. First, we'll provide a funding opportunity overview and Office of Indian Energy requirements, required application documents, topic areas, discuss applications specifically not of interest, discuss award information, go over who is eligible to apply, cost sharing requirements, discuss the content and form of a complete application, application eligibility requirements, merit review and selection criteria and process, registration requirements, how to submit an application and your points of contact, how to submit questions, and best practices. Then we'll have a short closing. The webinar will follow the sequence of the FOA, so you may want to have the FOA document available and follow along. Just a reminder that we will not have a question and answer session as part of this webinar. So please capture your questions as they will come up and send them via email to tribalgrants@hq.doe.gov. Additionally, these slides and an audio recording of this webinar will be posted in the next week or so. As registrants of the webinar, you will be notified when this material is available on the Office of Indian Energy's website. Again, note that if there are any inconsistencies between the funding opportunity announcement, this presentation, or statements from DOE or other personnel, the FOA document is the controlling document, and applicants should rely solely on that FOA language or seek clarification by sending your questions to tribalgrants@hq.doe.gov. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, we'll start with an overview of the funding opportunity announcement, or FOA. At this time, I will hand it over to Josh for this next section of the webinar. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Jamie, and thanks everyone for taking time out of your busy schedules today to join us. And then just a quick reminder, this is being recorded, and so after the fact, when it's ready, it will be sent out via email so that you can go back, take a look at it, and get additional information if you'd like. Okay, so let's start with the funding opportunity overview. So on page 1 of the FOA, you'll find the funding opportunity overview, which includes key information about this funding opportunity, as you can guess. The overview is a single table in the FOA document. However, for this presentation, it's broken up into sections that I'll cover here and in the next few slides. I really suggest reviewing this overview thoroughly, as this information establishes funding availability, project and applicant eligibility, application requirements, and so on. All of which will set the stage for your developing your application and gives an initial indication of project and applicant eligibility. It also helps you determine if this funding opportunity aligns with your project objectives and goals. So you can see here the overview starts with a FOA summary describing the intent of the funding opportunity, which is to solicit applications from tribal colleges and universities for planning to transition their campuses to clean energy. And we'll be diving into more detail later in the presentation on that. Just going down the rows here, total amount to be awarded. We have a total of approximately $5 million in federal funds to issue under this funding opportunity. And based on the total and the funding limits for individual awards, we anticipate issuing 15 to 35 awards under this FOA. Award amount, DOE funds for individual awards will range from a minimum of $100,000 to a maximum of $350,000. Types of funding agreements, you can see awards issued under this FOA will be in the form of grant agreements. And then performance of period of performance, we anticipate making awards with a period of performance of approximately 2 to 3 years. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, continuing on this slide and the next few slides is additional key information of that funding opportunity overview that you'll find on page 1 of the FOA. And we'll go over eligibility applicant requirements in detail on subsequent slides. So as you can see here, it does provide detail in the table, but I'm going to forego this explanation for now. I think it's really important, however, to note that DOE will not make eligibility determinations for potential applicants prior to the date on which applications to the FOA must be submitted. As Jamie was mentioning earlier, you may ask clarifying questions relative to the FOA, but DOE will not determine whether an applicant or a specific project is eligible during the application preparation stage of the process. So as such, the decision of whether to submit an application in response to this FOA lies solely with the applicant. Next slide, please. And then continuing on down the table, you can see cost share requirements. Fortunately, there is no cost share requirements for this funding opportunity. Additional considerations in the selection for funding. In addition to considering geographic distribution and optimum use of available DOE funding to achieve programmatic objectives, the selection official may, through the application of program policy factors, give additional consideration in the selection of applications for funding. And these are such as whether the tribal community has high energy costs, whether the tribal community is not connected to the traditional centralized electrical power grid, and or applicants who have not previously received a grant from the Office of Indian Energy. Next slide, please. Furthermore, the DOE Office of Indian Energy may, upon request, provide technical assistance to eligible applicants who've applied under this FOA and whose applications are comprehensively reviewed but not selected for negotiation. Also be aware that you may only submit one application to this FOA. And then also note, concept papers are not required, just full applications. Next slide, please. As Jamie mentioned previously, applications will only be accepted through IE Exchange, and the applications required forms and templates are available under that FOA on IE Exchange. The forms and templates, once you go into IE Exchange, click on the 3403 FOA number. You'll see the forms and templates are available under application forms and templates. And then again, that IE Exchange website is ie-exchange.energy.gov. And then remember, these forms and templates represent only a portion of the documents required for a complete application. The remaining documents required for a complete application have no specific format and are to be generated by the applicant. Further into the presentation, we'll go through all those documents that comprise a complete application. As was also previously discussed, DOE will notify all applicants of its eligibility and selection determinations via a notification letter by email. The notification letter will inform applicants with eligible applications if its application was selected for award negotiations or not. So those applicants will also receive written feedback at the time of notification. Ineligible applications will not be reviewed or considered for award, and if those are determined ineligible, the contracting officer will send a notification letter by email stating the basis upon which the application is ineligible and not considered for further review. Next slide, please. So here we get into the DOE Office of Indian Energy requirements. You can find these beginning on page 3 of the FOA document. Want to mention that on page 3 of the FOA document, and as well as listed on this slide, are not all inclusive, these requirements, and they cannot exclusively be relied upon as they do not reflect all evaluation factors and requirements for this FOA. So applicants must read the entire FOA to determine the complete set of requirements under this FOA. So we'll just go down these Office of Indian Energy requirements here. Pre-award costs. So except for pre-award costs with prior DOE approval, only cost share contributions made during the period of performance of the grant, if awarded, can be considered. However, this FOA does not have a required cost share contribution. Any costs incurred prior to award selection cannot be considered as cost share or for reimbursement by DOE. Eligibility statements and evidence. As previously mentioned, all applicants are required to submit eligibility statements and provide evidence of applicant and land status eligibility to support DOE's eligibility determination. Statements of commitment. The applicant commitment will be discussed in greater detail later in the presentation. However, all applicants are required to submit an applicant commitment file, which must include a statement of commitment. Typically, not with this FOA, but also cost sharing. Of course, we don't have that here. On the applicant's letterhead, it should be and signed by an authorized representative of the applicant. In addition, all other project participants, except for vendors, must submit letters of commitment and cost sharing, if any. There's not here, but under the participant letters of commitment file is where you'll submit that. Letters of support. Letters of support or endorsement by anyone not participating in the proposed project are not required or desired and should not be provided as part of the application. Post-award payment. So payment will be made electronically on a reimbursement basis through Automated Clearinghouse or ACH, and provided the requested or the requisite support is provided or normally reimbursed within 7 to 10 days. However, reimbursement may take up to 30 days, and you can find more detail in the FOA on that. Post-award reporting requirements. So selected applicants will be required to document progress in quarterly reports and then project outcomes in a comprehensive final report, as well as present at an annual program review to be held each fall in Colorado. So travel costs for this annual review, which is 1 week in duration, and then additional travel days. The travel costs for that must be included for each year of the grant in the proposed budget, including the year the initial award is anticipated. Cost share, again, cost share isn't involved here, so we can pass that. And next slide, please. So next we'll discuss the required application documents. Next slide, please. So the content and form of an application will be covered in detail later in the presentation. However, the required application documents are summarized here and on the next slide, also in section 4 of the FOA document beginning on page 23. I'd recommend you use Table 2, Required Application Documents, on pages 23 and 24 of the FOA document as a checklist when preparing an application. This is going to be really helpful to keep in hand as you're creating your application. Remember, forms and templates can be found on iExchange under Application Forms and Templates for this FOA, and all other required application documents are applicant generated. Application documents for which a form or template has been provided in iExchange are shaded light gray here in the slide, and those that must be executed or signed by an authorized representative are denoted with an asterisk. Next slide, please. So shown here are the remaining documents that comprise a complete application. When we'll go over each of these in more detail later. Note that you may submit an application at any time before the due date, and that you will be able to update it as needed until the deadline. Please do allow for sufficient time to ensure you have uploaded all required documents and that your application is complete prior to the due date and time, and make sure to buffer in time there for any sort of technical difficulties as well. Just a reminder that if there's any inconsistencies between the funding opportunity announcement, this presentation, or statements from DOE or other personnel, the FOA document is the controlling document, and applicants should rely solely on that FOA language or seek clarification by sending your questions to tribalgrants@hq.doe.gov. Again, these slides and audio recording of this webinar will be posted in the next week or so. And so as you are a registrant of this webinar, you'll be receiving an email with the recording. Next slide, please. Next, we'll go into the topic areas. Just a reminder that we will not have a question and answer session as part of this webinar, so please do, if you have any questions as we're going through, capture those and then send them via email to tribalgrants@hq.doe.gov. Additionally, again, the slides and audio recording of this webinar will be posted, as I mentioned, so keep a lookout for that. Again, note that if there are any inconsistencies, please do let us know and send your questions to tribalgrants@hq.doe.gov. Next slide, please. Okay, so just going over this again, let me see here. I think we got this mixed up. I'll go over this again. I think it's important. So this FOA builds on efforts by the DOE Office of Indian Energy and the authorities granted to the DOE Office of Indian Energy under the EPAC 2005 to accelerate the deployment of clean energy technology on tribal lands. And as Jamie mentioned earlier, between 2010 and 2022, the DOE Office of Indian Energy has invested more than $190 million in over 240 tribal energy projects across the contiguous 48 states and Alaska. And these projects are collectively valued at more than $300 million and leveraged by more than over $125 million in recipient cost share. Next slide, please. So through this FOA, the DOE Office of Indian Energy will continue its efforts to advance tribal energy sovereignty and maximize the deployment of clean, reliable, affordable, and local energy solutions. In support of these objectives, the DOE Office of Indian Energy intends to provide financial support to tribal colleges and universities to plan the transition of their campuses to clean energy. Specifically, DOE's Office of Indian Energy will only consider applications from tribal colleges and universities. Applications from a consortium of TCUs, or just short consortium, will be accepted but must be submitted by a single tribal college or university acting as the applicant and representing the consortium. Next slide, please. Okay, so here we get into the topic areas under this funding opportunity. Topic area 1 is for clean energy project planning to transition the tribal college or university to a clean energy campus. And 2, clean energy curriculum planning to complement the transition to clean energy. Eligible planning activities under topic area 1 must include clean energy project studies and analyses, including activities. And then we have topic area 2 is for deployment of clean energy. Topic area 2, the buildings and or land to be used for the project must be, oh, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong slide there.
Which slide are you on, Josh?
It looks like I had 2 additional ones, I'm sorry. And I was wondering why they were sounding a little bit different. So I am on the slide that you are on now, Joe, thanks.
Okay.
Okay, so let's start this over. So funding opportunity, let's get into the topic areas for this one. So we're soliciting applications again to conduct clean energy planning for tribal colleges and universities. Projects selected are intended to result in specific outcomes, so measurable results and end products. Funds under this topic area are intended to cover internal personnel costs, such as energy and infrastructure management roles. It may be used for community outreach, including native language translation. We'll go over some of the definitions in the next slide. So next slide, please. So the activities that are eligible for planning under this topic area may include, but they're not limited to, strategic energy planning, conducting an energy options analysis, conducting energy audits to establish baseline energy use and energy efficiency options, developing an energy organization or office, conducting climate resiliency planning, establishing energy policy, regulations, or codes to reduce energy use or promote energy development, and obtaining skills and training related to energy use, development, or management. Applicants may propose a single eligible planning activity, multiple planning activities, or all of the eligible activities provided that the amount of DOE funding being requested does not exceed the maximum DOE funding per individual award specified under Section 2A1, which is $350,000. We'll not go through each of these eligible activities right now. However, for more information on each of these, you can look at Section 1B of the FOA. Next slide, please. Okay, so going through the agenda, we're going to get into applications not of interest. Just a reminder that we will not have a question and answer session as part of this webinar, so please do capture your questions as they come up and send them via email to tribalgrants@hq.doe.gov, and then add the FOA number to the subject line as well. And again, just a quick reminder that these slides and audio recording will be posted to each registrant in the next week or so. And then just another reminder about inconsistencies. If you find any, please do send any questions or document any of those and send that to tribalgrants@hq.doe.gov. Next slide, please. Okay, so the types of applications on this slide and then the next few slides are specifically not of interest, and those will be deemed non-responsive and will not be reviewed or considered. So applications that fall outside the technical parameters specified in Section 1B of the FOA are not of interest. Next slide, please. And now we're going to move on to award information. And then let's see. Next slide, please. Okay, so the award information included on this slide is also included as part of the executive summary that we had gone over earlier. So again, DOE expects to make approximately $5 million in federal funds, and we anticipate issuing approximately 15 to 35 awards under this funding opportunity announcement. And then just a reminder too that funding per individual award under this FOA will range from no less than $100,000 to a maximum of $350,000. And then again, we anticipate making awards with a period of performance of approximately 2 to 3 years. Next slide, please. Okay, next we'll discuss eligibility. Next slide, please. So who's eligible to apply? Remember, one of the files that comprise an application is the eligibility statements and evidence file. You'll be required to complete the template provided and then provide evidence to support DOE's eligibility determination. Please see the Microsoft Word template found under application forms and templates for this FOA. Again, once you go into IE Exchange and then click on the FOA 3403, you'll be able to find that. And then note the use of the template is not required. However, the information included within the template is required. Note that DOE, again, will not make sufficiency determinations prior to an application being submitted. Applicants that do not meet the eligibility requirements under Section 3A of the FOA will be deemed ineligible, and their applications will not be reviewed or considered. Due to the competitive nature of the funding opportunity, DOE will not advise you or make a determination on whether your entity or your proposed project are eligible prior to an application being submitted. So please do not seek advice from any DOE employee, DOE contractor, or lab staff. The DOE Office of Indian Energy will only consider applications from tribal colleges and universities, as I mentioned previously, and then applications from a consortium of tribal colleges and universities will be accepted, but they must be submitted by a single tribal college or university acting as the applicant and representing that consortium. Next slide, please. So specifically, tribal colleges and universities, or TCUs, for purposes of this FOA are: 1, institutions of higher education located in the 48 contiguous United States or Alaska, and 2, defined and eligible based on the Tribally Controlled Community College Assistance Act of 1978 and the Higher Education Act of 1965, respectively. And so as follows, tribal colleges and universities for purposes of this FOA mean institutions of higher education which are formally controlled or have been formally sanctioned or chartered by the governing body of an Indian tribe or tribes, except that no more than one such institution shall be recognized with respect to any such tribe, including those institutions cited and eligible for funding under Section 532 of the Equity in Educational Land Grant Status Act of 1994, any other institution that qualifies for funding under the Tribally Controlled Community College Assistance Act of 1978, and Diné College authorized in the Navajo Community College Assistance Act of 1978, Public Law 95-471, Title II. And then also these definitions can be found under Section 3A of the FOA document, and also under Appendix A of the FOA document. Next slide, please. And again, questions regarding eligibility, just a reminder, we will not make eligibility determinations for potential applicants prior to the date on which applications to this FOA must be submitted. And so the decision of whether to submit an application in response to this FOA lies solely with the applicant. Again, we won't have any question and answer session as part of this webinar, so please do send us any of your questions to tribalgrants@hq.doe.gov. And again, slides and audio recording of this webinar will be available shortly, and those will be sent out via email to all registrants of the webinar. Next slide, please. Okay, so next we'll go over cost share requirements. Again, there aren't any cost share requirements for this. And so let's just skip that. Next slide, please. And there we go. No cost share is required for applications submitted under this FOA, which is great. Next slide, please. Okay, so now we're going to head on to content and form of application. And for this, I'm going to hand it back over to Jamie.
Great, thank you, Josh. Appreciate it. You can see why we break this up into a couple people. Okay, we're gonna talk next on the content and form of the application. Just as a reminder, as Josh just mentioned, we're not going to have a question and answer session as part of this webinar. So please capture your questions as they come up and email them to tribalgrants@hq.doe.gov, and look out for those slides and the recording of this webinar. They'll be posted on our website and also emailed to you as a registrant of the webinar in the next week or so. Next slide, please. Okay, next we're going to talk about the content and the form of an application. We'll go over each required application document shown on the slide. Remember, each of the files shown on the slide and the next slide are required for a complete application. A similar table is included on pages 22 and 23 of the FOA document. I would urge you to use this as a checklist when preparing and uploading your application to ensure that all relevant documents comprising a complete application are submitted. Please bear with me as I'll be covering a lot of information. Remember, much of this is documented in Section 4C, Content and Form of the Application, in the funding opportunity announcement. Application documents for which a form or template has been provided in iExchange are shaded in light gray, and those that must be executed or signed by an authorized representative are denoted with an asterisk. Applications must include, number 1, an application for federal assistance, SF 424. The application for federal assistance is a formal application for funding. The form must be signed by an authorized representative of the applicant. By signing, the authorized representative is making certifications and assurances, and therefore the form must be either digitally or manually in ink and scanned before being uploaded as part of your application. Typed signatures do not constitute a digital signature. Note that forms and templates can be obtained from the IE Exchange webpage under the Application Forms and Templates section, and clicking on the View Application Forms and Templates for the list, which then can be opened, saved, completed, and then uploaded as part of your application. All other elements are self-generated by the applicant. The next required document is the summary slide, a single PowerPoint slide that provides quick facts about the proposed project. Slide content requirements are provided in the FOA, and a template is provided as part of the application forms and templates on iExchange. The next document is the technical volume. The technical volume is the key submission document describing the proposed project and addressing the merit review criteria. The technical volume must not exceed 15 pages, excluding the cover page and table of contents, as DOE will only review the first 15 pages. See the technical volume template on iExchange for instructions and format. Briefly, the technical volume should include a cover page. Again, the cover page is not counted against the 15-page limit. A table of contents, again, not counted against the 15-page limit. An executive summary, project description and outcomes, roles, responsibilities, capabilities, and commitment. The next document is the work plan. The work plan is not part of the technical volume, but to be included as a separate file. The work plan should describe the work to be accomplished and how the applicant will achieve project milestones. The work plan must not exceed 5 pages, excluding the milestone table. See the template for instructions and format. The template can be obtained under application forms and templates on iExchange. The next document is the eligibility statements and evidence file. All applicants are required to submit eligibility statements that document and provide evidence of applicant and land status eligibility to support DOE's eligibility determination. A Microsoft Word template has been provided. This template is available under the FOA application forms and templates on iExchange. As with all the templates, the use of the eligibility statements and evidence template is not required, but the information included within the eligibility statements and evidence template is required. Note that this form must be signed by an authorized representative, either digitally or manually in ink and scanned before being uploaded as part of your application. Again, typed signatures do not constitute a digital signature. All applicants are required to submit an applicant commitment file, which must include an executed statement of commitment and cost sharing, of which there is none for this particular FOA, by the applicant. See page 27 of the FOA for more on the specific information that is needed as part of those applicant commitments. The next document is the participant letters of commitment file. This file needs to include letters of commitment and cost sharing, of which there is none for this FOA, from all other project participants, excluding vendors. The letters must be specific to this FOA, and if cost share is being committed, of which none is required for this FOA, include a statement of the total amount and type of cost share being committed and a detailed estimate of the cash value, basis of, and nature of all contributions to the project by the project participant. And remember, letters of support or endorsement by anyone not participating in this proposed project are not required or desired and should not be provided as part of the application. The next file under the resume file, all applicants are required to provide a resume for the business contact and the project manager and key persons proposed, including tribal staff, as part of the project. A key person is an individual who contributes in a substantive and measurable way to the execution of the project. Each resume must not exceed 3 pages. Save all resumes into a single file for uploading with your application. Remember, the table of required application elements beginning on page 22 of the FOA should be used as a checklist of the components to be included as part of an application. Next slide, please. A form or template has been provided for the following required application documents. Number 1, the application for federal assistance, Form SF-424. Number 2, a summary slide. Number 3, the technical volume. Number 4, work plan. Number 5, eligibility statements and evidence file. Number 6, budget justification workbooks. There's one for the prime recipient as well as the subrecipient. Number 7, a budget support file template. Number 8, applicant registration certifications. Number 9, the SFLLL disclosure of lobbying activities. And number 10, the location of work file. The forms and templates can be obtained from the iExchange webpage under the application forms and templates by clicking on the View Application Forms and Templates link for the list, which then can be opened, saved, completed, and uploaded as part of your application. All other elements are self-generated by the applicant. As with all the templates, the use of the templates is not required, but the information included within the template is required. The applicant commitment and cost sharing file, participant letters of commitment and cost sharing file, and resume file do not have a specific format and need to be generated by the applicant. Next slide, please. Next, we'll go through each of the remaining components of an application. Again, there's a lot of information to cover relative to the required application elements on this slide. Hang in there. In addition to the required application documents covered on the preceding slide, an application must also include the following files. The budget justification workbook is a required form and must include both the funds being requested from DOE as well as those proposed as cost share, although cost share is not required for this funding opportunity. Let me repeat, the budget and the budget justification must reflect all project costs, regardless of whether those funds are being requested from DOE or provided as cost share. The form itself is a multi-tab Microsoft Excel workbook. In addition to the proposed costs, the form requests the basis of estimate for the cost being proposed. The form can be downloaded from the iExchange website under the application forms and templates. The next form is that the applicants must provide a separate budget justification for each subrecipient that is expected to perform work estimated to be more than $250,000 or 25% of the total work effort, whichever is less. The subrecipient is a subawardee who is providing cost share, although not required, or with a vested interest in the proposed project beyond providing goods and services for the proposed project. If none of the proposed subrecipients meet thresholds above, a subrecipient budget justification form is not required, and instead a file stating no subrecipient being proposed meets the threshold requirements, and therefore a subrecipient budget justification form is not being provided here as an attachment, must be uploaded instead. Information about that statement is also included in the funding opportunity announcement. Vendor budget information should not be included as part of the subrecipient budget justification, but rather included as part of the applicant's budget support file under contractual. A vendor is an entity contracted to provide goods and services within normal business operations who provides similar goods and services to many different purchasers and operates in a competitive environment. The budget support file. All applicants are required to submit support for their proposed budget to include an indirect rate agreement, breakdown of fringe costs, basis of cost estimate documentation, budget support for the vendors, and other relevant supplemental information. A Microsoft Word template has been provided. The budget support template is available under application forms and templates for this particular FOA on the iExchange website. Note that the use of the budget support template is not required, but the information within the budget support template is required. The next form is the registration certifications file. All applicants must certify that all system registrations have been completed and certified to those registrations as part of the applicant registration certifications file. A Microsoft Word template has been provided. The applicant registration certifications template, as with other forms and templates, is available under the application forms and templates on iExchange Further, the use of the registration certification template is not required, but the information included within the registration certification template is required. We're getting closer, please bear with us. Instructions for the document comprising a complete application is contained under section 4C of the FOA document. The next document required for your application is the disclosure of lobbying activities, Form SFLLL. This is required to be submitted regardless of whether funds are being paid or will be paid for influencing or attempting to influence persons in connection with this application. Recipients and subrecipients may not use any federal funds to influence or attempt to influence directly or indirectly congressional action on any legislative or appropriation matters. All applicants are required to complete and submit the SFLLL disclosure of lobbying activities and disclose if any non-federal funds have been paid or will be paid to any person for influencing or attempting to influence any of the following in connection with your application. Number 1, an officer or employee of any federal agency. Number 2, a member of Congress. Number 3, an officer or employee of Congress. Or number 4, an employee or a member of Congress. An employee of a member of Congress. Sorry about that. If no non-federal funds have been paid or will be paid to any person for influencing or attempting to influence any of the above in connection with your application, indicate none and sign and date the form. This form is available under the announcement required application documents on IE Exchange. The next form is locations of work. The applicant must provide a list of the location or locations where project work will be performed by the recipient or subrecipient. A Microsoft Excel template has been provided. Next, the potentially duplicate funding file. If the applicant or project team member has other active awards of federal funds, the applicant must determine whether the activities of those awards potentially overlap with the activities set forth in the application to this FOA. If there is a potential overlap, the applicant must notify DOE in writing of the potential overlap and state how it will ensure any project funds, for example, recipient cost share and federal funds, will not be used for identical costs under multiple awards. Likewise, for projects that receive funding under this FOA, if a recipient or project team member receives any other award or federal funds for activities that potentially overlap with the activities funded under the DOE award, the recipient must promptly notify DOE in writing of the potential overlap and state whether the project funds from any of those other federal awards have been, are being, or are to be used in whole or in part for one or more of the identical cost items under the DOE award. If there are identical cost items, the recipient must promptly notify the DOE contracting officer in writing of the potential duplication and eliminate any inappropriate duplication of funding. If potentially duplicate funding does not apply, the potentially duplicative funding notice is not required, and instead a file must be submitted stating the applicant or project team member do not have any other active awards that potentially overlap with activities proposed in this application, and therefore a potentially duplicative funding notice is not being provided here as an attachment. Again, that language is located in the funding opportunity announcement. The next form is the supplemental information file. All applicants must submit a supplemental information file and include any graphics, maps, photographs, or other visuals, background information, or any other information to supplement the technical volume, including maps, photographs, or other visuals. If you choose not to provide any graphics, relevant background, or supplemental data beyond that which may be in the technical volume, submit a file stating no additional site, resource maps, or graphics information is being provided as an attachment. Again, that language is included in the funding opportunity announcement. Note that this information may actually be necessary to complete your application and to fully address the technical review criteria. See Section 5A. Whew. Thank you for bearing with me. Next, to ensure you are submitting all required components of an application, I would again urge you to use the table beginning on page 22 of the FOA document as a checklist. Note that you may submit an application at any time before the due date and that you will be able to update as needed until the deadline. Please allow sufficient time to ensure you have uploaded all required documents and that your application is complete prior to the due date and time. Next slide, please. As shown here, here are the forms and templates associated with the previous slide. Those include the budget justification workbook. Applicants must also provide a separate budget justification for each subrecipient, the budget support file, the applicant registration certifications, the disclosure of lobbying activities, and the locations of work forms. The remaining required application documents, which include potentially duplicate funding file and the supplemental information file, do not have a specific format and do need to be generated by the applicant. Next slide, please. Next, we'll discuss application eligibility requirements. Just a reminder that we will not have a Q&A session as part of this webinar, so please capture your questions as they come up and send them via email to tribalgrants@hq.doe.gov. Additionally, these slides and an audio recording of this webinar will be posted in the next week or so. As a registrant of the webinar, you will be notified when this material is available on the Office of Indian Energy's website. Again, note that if there are any inconsistencies between the funding opportunity announcement, this presentation, or statements from DOE or other personnel, the FOA document is the controlling document and applicants should rely solely on that FOA language or seek clarification by sending your questions to tribalgrants@hq.doe.gov. Next slide, please. Excuse me. As we previously pointed out, applicants must submit applications no later than 5 p.m. Eastern Time on December 18th, 2024. Note that the deadline of 5 p.m. is Eastern Time. Please plan accordingly and adjust for your time zone. Once submitted, DOE will conduct an eligibility review. An application will be deemed eligible only if the applicant is an eligible entity per Section 3A of the FOA, the application complies with the content, format, and submission requirements in Section 4A and Section 4C of the FOA. The applicant successfully uploaded all required documents and clicked the Submit button in iExchange by the deadline stated in the FOA. The proposed project is responsive to the intent of the FOA, Section 1 and Section 3D of the FOA. The application meets any other eligibility requirements identified in Section 3 of the FOA. Please be aware that DOE will not make eligibility determinations prior to the date on which the applications are due. The decision on whether to submit an application in response to this FOA lies solely with the applicant. In other words, DOE will not advise you or make a determination on whether your entity or your proposed project are eligible prior to an application being submitted. So please do not seek advice from any DOE employees, DOE contractor, or laboratory staff. All questions regarding this FOA must be submitted in writing via email to tribalgrants@hq.doe.gov. This ensures you receive an official answer and ensures that all potential applicants have the benefit of those responses. Next slide, please. Next, we're going to discuss the merit review and selection criteria and process. Next slide, please. Regarding the merit review and selection process, the merit review and selection process consists of a series of reviews, including an initial eligibility review, rigorous technical review, and programmatic review. The rigorous technical reviews are conducted by reviewers that are experts in the subject matter of the funding opportunity announcement. Ultimately, the selection official considers
the recommendations of reviewers along with other considerations such as program policy factors to make selection decisions. Next slide, please. This slide reflects the multi-tiered review process, which begins with an eligibility review, and if an applicant is determined eligible, the application undergoes a comprehensive technical review consisting of independent reviews by subject matter experts who providing ratings and document strengths and weaknesses of each application relative to the merit review criteria published in the funding opportunity announcement. After the independent reviewer meeting concludes, the Federal Consensus Board begins its review. The Federal Consensus Board's primary responsibility is to determine the technical merit of each application, which is inherently a federal function, and make selection recommendations based on technical merit. In other words, determines the selection range. Following the Federal Consensus Board, a merit review advisory report is produced, which describes how the merit review was conducted and sets forth the Federal Consensus Board technical rankings, addresses the FOA specific program policy factors and any other selection factors set forth in the FOA. Finally, the selection official reviews the merit review advisory report, considers the recommendations of the Federal Consensus Board, applies the program policy factors if he or she chooses, and makes the selection decisions for negotiation and award. Next slide, please. Next, we'll go over the merit review criteria, or what your application will be reviewed against. The 4 criterion and their weights are: number 1, goals and objectives weighted at 15%. Number 2, project description and outcomes weighted at 40%. Number 3, roles, responsibilities, capabilities, and commitment weighted at 30%. And number 4, the work plan weighted at 15%. Section 5A of the FOA document, beginning on page 46 of the FOA document, identifies the technical review criteria upon which your applications will be reviewed. We will go through the technical review criteria in this webinar. We will not go through the technical review criteria in this webinar. So please review the technical review criteria included in section 5A of the FOA and address each in your technical volume and work plan. Applicants should also consider the weight of each of these evaluation criteria, see section 5A of the FOA, when preparing the technical volume and work plan documents. Next slide, please. Next, we'll talk about program policy factors. In addition to the technical review criteria, the selection official may consider the program policy factors in determining which applications to select for award negotiations. Next slide, please. The selection official may consider the program policy factors shown here to come to a final selection decision. The program policy factors are included here and beginning on page 49 of the FOA document. The selection official can consider, in no particular order, number 1, geographic distribution, number 2, degree to which the proposed project optimized the use of available DOE funding, and whether proposed projects serve, number 3, tribal communities with high energy costs, number 4, tribal communities not connected to the traditional centralized electrical power grid, and number 5, applicants who have not previously received a grant from the Office of Indian Energy. Next slide, please. Next, the requisite registration requirements. Just a reminder that we will not have a question and answer session as part of this webinar, so please capture your questions as they come up and send them via email to tribalgrants@hq.doe.gov. Additionally, these slides and an audio recording of this webinar will be posted in the next week or so. As a registrant of the webinar, you will be notified when this material is available on the Office of Indian Energy's website. Again, note that if there are any inconsistencies between the funding opportunity announcement, this presentation, or statements from DOE or other personnel, the FOA document is the controlling document, and applicants should rely solely on that FOA language or seek clarification by sending your questions to tribalgrants@hq.doe.gov. I know there's a lot of information, however, we are approaching the end. Next slide, please.
Okay, the following registrations are required before submitting an application. IE Exchange. Register and create an account on IE Exchange at ie-exchange.energy.gov. This account will then allow the user to register for any open FOAs that are currently in IE Exchange. Remember, applications will only be accepted through IE Exchange. A control number will be assigned while registering in IE Exchange. Retain this number as it will be required on all application documents. The IE Exchange registration does not have a delay. The remaining registration requirements below could take several weeks to process and are required prior to submitting an application. Therefore, all potential applicants lacking a UEI number or not yet registered in SAM, FedConnect, or grants.gov should complete those registrations as soon as possible. Obtain a unique entity ID or UEI number. Obtain a unique entity identifier or UEI number. This is the number that replaced the Data Universal Numbering System or DUNS number for entities doing business with the federal government. Obtain this number during the SAM registration or renewal process at sam.gov. A UEI is required for all entities doing business with the federal government. System for Award Management. Register with the System for Award Management or SAM at sam.gov, designating an electronic business point of contact, eBiz POC. Obtaining a special password called an MPIN and obtaining a UEI number are important steps in SAM registration. SAM registration must be updated annually. FedConnect. Register in FedConnect at fedconnect.net. To create an organization account, your organization's SAM MPIN from above is required. For more information about the SAM MPIN or other registration requirements, review the FedConnect Ready, Set, Go guide at the link fedconnect.net/FedConnect Ready, Set, Go.pdf. Grants.gov. Register in grants.gov at grants.gov to receive automatic updates when amendments to this FOA are posted. However, please note that exchange applications will not be accepted through grants.gov. All applications must be submitted through IE Exchange at ie-exchange.energy.gov. Your registration in grants.gov only means you'll receive email notices of any amendments to the FOA. The applicant will be required to certify that these registrations have been completed and to include that certification as part of their application. Therefore, it is essential that these registrations be completed as soon as possible, as some may take several weeks to process. Failure to complete the registrations below prior to submitting an application could result in DOE determining that the applicant is not qualified to receive a federal award. See Section 6B of the FOA beginning on page 53 for more on required registrations. Next slide, please. Next, we'll speak about application submission requirements and designated points of contact. Next slide, please. As we said, all applications must be submitted in IE Exchange. DOE will not review or consider applications submitted through any other means. Please see the IE Exchange applicant guide found on IE Exchange under Manuals. It is a step-by-step guide including screenshots on how to register, create an account, and submit an application in IE Exchange. We have also created an IE Exchange registration and login guide to help you through the multi-factor login process. This guide also has screenshots and explains the login.gov registration process. Next slide, please. Next, on to key information regarding submission of an application.
Check entries in IE Exchange. Submissions could be deemed ineligible due to an incorrect entry. DOE strongly encourages applicants to submit applications 1 to 2 days prior to the deadline to allow for full upload of application documents and to avoid any potential technical issues. Make sure you push the submit button. Any changes made after you push the submit button will unsubmit your application and you will need to push the submit button again. For your records, print out the IE Exchange confirmation page at each step, which contains the application's control number. Note that IE Exchange is designated to enforce the deadlines specified in this FOA. The apply and submit buttons will be automatically disabled at the defined submission deadlines. Should applicants experience problems with IE Exchange, the following information may be helpful. Applicants that experience issues with submissions prior to the FOA deadline, in the event that an applicant experienced technical issues with the submission, the applicant should contact the Exchange Help Desk for assistance at exchangehelp@hq.doe.gov. This is available, this email address is available in Exchange with the funding opportunity announcement. The Exchange Help Desk will assist applicants in resolving issues. However, those applicants who are unable to submit their applications because they are submitting them at the last minute when network traffic is at its heaviest will not be eligible for assistance from the Exchange Help Desk. The Office of Indian Energy is not able to assist with technical issues associated with the IE Exchange system or the submittal of an application. Applicants that experience issues with submissions that result in late submissions should also contact the Exchange Help Desk for assistance. The Exchange Help Desk and/or the IE Exchange system administrators may be able to assist. I would strongly encourage you to keep records and/or documentation, including screenshots of any issues you experience in submitting your application and any efforts made to resolve those issues. In the event of a late submission, that documentation may be factored into whether your late application is considered. Next slide, please. In addition, per page 62 of the FOA, please keep in mind that all information provided by the applicant must, to the greatest extent possible, exclude personally identifiable information, or PII. Specifically, applicants must screen resumes to ensure that they do not contain such PII as personal addresses, phone/cell numbers, personal emails, and/or social security numbers. In short, if the PII is not essential to the application, it should not be in the application. Next slide, please. Applicant points of contact. Applicants must designate primary and backup points of contact in IE Exchange with whom DOE will communicate during the process. Remember, these are the points of contact that will be used to notify applicants of whether their application was deemed non-responsive, non-compliant, unsuccessful, or selected for negotiation of an award. Next slide, please. And now, how to submit FOA-related questions. We're almost done. Next slide, please. For questions regarding the FOA, send an email to tribalgrants@hq.doe.gov. However, before submitting a question, I'd urge you to check the frequently asked questions FAQ page on IE Exchange to see if your question has already been answered. We will attempt to answer questions within 3 business days. You will be notified when a response to your question is posted. Next. For problems logging into IE Exchange or uploading and submitting application documents, email IE Exchange Help Desk at exchangehelp@hq.doe.gov and include the FOA name and number in the subject line. Exchange Help can be found in the upper right corner of each web page on IE Exchange or under Contact Us at the bottom of each web page. I'd also recommend, if you are having difficulties, that you see the IE Exchange applicant guide and the IE Exchange registration and login guide. Those both can be found at ie-exchange.energy.gov/manuals. As these provide a step-by-step guide
with screenshots on how to log in, register, and create an account and submit an application into iExchange. Specific questions regarding the FOA itself should be sent to tribalgrants@hq.doe.gov. Please include the FOA number and in the subject line. Also, remember to check out the non-FOA specific questions on iExchange under questions and answers in the left navigation, and the FOA specific frequently asked questions on the FAQs webpage for this FOA. Next slide, please. And on to best practices. We're almost there. Just a reminder that we will not have a question and answer session as part of this webinar, so please capture your questions as they come up and send them via email to tribalgrants@hq.doe.gov. Additionally, we will provide an audio recording of this webinar and the slides in the next week or so. You will be notified when this material is available on the Office of Indian Energy's website. Lastly, if there are any inconsistencies between the FOA, the funding opportunity announcement, this presentation, or statements from DOE or other personnel, the FOA document is the controlling document, and applicants should rely solely on the FOA language or seek clarification by sending your questions to tribalgrants@hq.doe.gov. Next slide, please. Here are a few recommendations. Please download the funding opportunity announcement and read it thoroughly so you understand all the steps and requirements for submitting an application. Do not rely solely on this webinar. If you are considering submitting an application, please register in iExchange as soon as possible to obtain a control number. This control number must be included on all application documents. Check the frequently asked questions on the iExchange periodically for any supplemental information or amendments to the FOA. Next slide, please. Okay, and in closing, the next slide, a few final comments. Hopefully we've answered some of your questions and provided an overview of the FOA and the process. However, if you have any questions, please send us an email at tribalgrants@hq.doe.gov. Please do not ask me or any other Office of Indian Energy staff, contractors, or laboratory personnel about the eligibility of your project or any other questions related to this FOA, as only the formal responses posted under the FAQs on the iExchange website will be honored. The purpose of accepting only written questions is that typically, if you have a question, someone else has that same question. Also, this ensures that everyone has the same information relative to this competitive opportunity. Consider submitting your application early. You can always revise or update the documents up until the application deadline. These slides and audio recording of this webinar will be posted in the next week or so. As a registrant of the webinar, you'll receive an email when the material is available. Just as a reminder, your participation in this webinar is completely voluntary. There are no particular advantages or disadvantages to the application evaluation process with respect to your participation in the webinar today. Remember, if there are any inconsistencies between the funding opportunity announcement, this presentation, or statements from DOE or other personnel, the FOA document is the controlling document, and applicants should rely solely on that FOA language or seek clarification by sending your questions to tribalgrants@hq.doe.gov. Consider subscribing to the Office of Indian Energy email newsletter and information on funding opportunities. Remember that registering in grants.gov means you'll receive email notices of any amendments to the FOA. The applications will not be accepted through grants.gov. Next slide, please. Thank you so much. You made it. Thank you for your time and attention. You can reach us on our main help desk phone number or email, and you can learn more about our office at energy.gov/IndianEnergy. I'd also like to invite you to join our email list to subscribe. See the main page of our website at energy.gov/IndianEnergy. By subscribing, you'll receive any information on this funding opportunities through other agencies, training opportunities, webinars, and other upcoming events. Using the QR code, you can also subscribe to our TCU newsletter. For
For information on previously funded tribal energy projects, see the Projects tab on the website. For a list of other open funding opportunity announcements, see Funding using the top navigation. The Office of Indian Energy also offers technical assistance at no cost to tribes and tribal entities. If interested, please check out the technical assistance section of the website and submit a request. And follow us on X and Facebook at DOE Indian Energy. Next slide, please. Thank you. This concludes the webinar. You'll be notified when the slides and recording are posted. Thanks so much.